Alright, so I guess let's first address the elephant in the room here. And I switched back to my other wired headset because while editing the last video, I noticed that there were a lot of audio sync errors, so hopefully this should be a little bit better. So when we last left our heroes, we converted the main directory to using UV instead of pipenth as its virtual environment. The advantages being it's easier to manage multiple versions. It's built in Rust, so it's a lot faster. It's a smaller file size, and it's just the way that the cool kids are doing things. So in this one, what I want to do is take our Docker file approach that we have, and I want to in the Docker file, I want to use UV for that. And so that'll replace our use of pip on this line, which will just help speed up our Docker build. Alright, so just like how in the last video we used that migrate to UV package, we'll cd over into the front end first and run UVX migrate to UV. Alright, so it recognized that it was just using pip automatically, and if we take a look in the Explorer, we don't have a requirements file anymore. We have the uv.lock. Great, that's what we wanted. So now let's do the same thing on the backend too. So cd into the backend folder, and then we can just up on our keyboard and UVX migrate to UV. Did the same thing, deleted that pesky requirements file. And remember that kind of the reason that we're doing that is because the dependencies for the backend it's really just these two dependencies here. It's Fast API and DuckDB right now. And then the dependencies on the front end they include basically everything else. They just don't include those. This is a common practice to have UV directly in the container. So for that reason, Astral actually puts out documentation for how you can integrate UV into Docker images. So over here it gives a little bit more an overview. But what I want to point out is this Docker example here, which points to this repository right here. So this is kind of the example that you can use to get things up and running. So if we go ahead and look at the Docker file that they have, so we're only going to be using a couple commands here. So notice, let me bring you back here first. There are a bunch of derived images that that Astral has created that they can use, which they include both the Python version that they specify in here, as well as it includes UV with it already. So it's already a pre-configured image. So it'd be something like this. So we want to copy this command, and then down here we want to use this to actually install the dependencies. So let's start with the Docker file on our backend. So the first thing that we're going to do is we have the base image, so from Python 3.10 Slim. So we've replaced that with the Astral image, which includes Python 3.10. Sort of just best practice, just keep the same version. Although we could do like Python 3.14 or something. You can actually also, if you really don't care about version pinning, you can actually do latest as well, and that's in their documentation. But that's really living on the edge, and so we don't want to do that. So we'll keep 3.10. That's fine, and then we don't need this pip install command anymore, so we can get rid of that. We still want to copy everything as usual, and then paste in. So this is basically what is in the what is in that sample Docker file that we just saw, so to be able to install everything. But you see this UV sync, which I mentioned in the last video that this is kind of the new pip install that we can do. So we'll go ahead and snag that, and then we need to change one more thing. So this command down here for UVcorn, we want to access that with UV now. So this command, which I'll just paste by the side so that you can see the difference. So basically everything is the same: UVcorn, route app, host, port, etc., all that. The only difference is we have UV running first. Okay, so now we can get rid of that and save that. That's the Docker backend. So now let's do the same thing to the front end here. So change that. I was playing around with something before, that's why it said latest. So we'll change that to 310. Remember, the front end is a little bit different because we added that Python unbuffered from the Docker video. And we added this to be able to install Kaleido. So, okay, let's see what else we need in here. We'll take the actual command to install things, and we don't need the requirements file or anything here, so we can get rid of that. And then we should just be able to do that. And then for the command, we just want to add in UV run. Okay, and then that should work. So that is our Docker file for the front end. So we change the image, do the install, and we change it to UV. Okay, so we shouldn't need to do anything to the actual Docker compose file here. So we should be able to, on the command line, just cd whack whack, and then Docker compose. I don't know what I was trying to type there. Docker compose up. Let's start with the dash build. Let's see what happens. Failed to install checksum. Why is it looking for a requirements file? Did we not save something? Oh. Alright. That apparently was still in the backend, so let's get rid of that. I may have been editing something to the backend. So what was happening here was, and you may have noticed this before, is we would get warnings that it didn't detect a Python version in the pyproject.toml before, so it defaulted to version 3.12, which is the last one that we used. So we didn't want that. We want 3.10. So I added those to both of the project tomls here. And then I needed to go back on the front end, and because it detected the dependencies had changed, I had to use the command uv lock, which just regenerates the actual lock files themselves. So it said require Python 3.12 before when we first created it, and again, I think that was because it's the last one that we ended up using. So now it says 3.10. So the uv.lock file is what actually creates like the locked versions, like it pins all the versions and everything that we want to specify. So if we look in the Docker files that we're using, so this, I guess, is more best practice to use the -- locked command with UV synced, and this will actually use the pinned versions rather than going out and getting the latest version and potentially introduce a bug. So then once I did that, then I came back to the main directory and just did docker compose up dash dash build, and it seems to be working now. So that I guess fixes things. So moral of the story: make sure that you have everything in your PyProject.toml. So, alright, so I guess that works. So, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.